Okay, if you didn't already know it, ESPN is making sure that you're aware of it. Billy Napier on the hot seat. I mean, that's not a new one. It says the Gators hire of Napier looked strong at the time as they landed a coach who had been very selective about his first Power 5 job after a successful stint at Louisiana. But Napier is 11-14, Ryan, and 6-10 in the league, and has had challenges with on-field consistency, retaining and attracting top players, and maintaining a strong staff. Florida hasn't had a. This is amazing stat. Florida hasn't had a coach make it through year 4 since Urban Meyer and his health issues, and might be hesitant about another quick change. They go on to talk about, it says, the status of athletic director Scott Strickland, who hired Napier, should be monitored here. No, it shouldn't. The guy should be pushed out the door, but whatever. Your comments on where Florida's at, Billy Napier. I think Billy Napier is quite clearly on the hot seat. There's no question about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where I think I was saying to you guys a few weeks ago, if he's such on the hot seat, if there's so much pressure, I think Florida's schedule, when you look at it, and you think about where Florida is right now, I think they've got it the worst. So you know that this is probably not going to go well this season. You're subject to another losing season, and why didn't you just get rid of him during this cycle? If this is how everyone feels, why wouldn't they just make the change in the last couple months?
So
Now it's getting a little late for that, but in the last couple months, if this is all of the commentary, why not just pull the trigger and move on if it looks this grim?
So I've got two things I want to say about that. First, touching on their schedule. Listen to their start, Ryan. They could be 1-3 out the gates. They got the Canes coming to Gainesville. Then they host Samford, a team that scored 100 million points on them, I feel like, a couple years ago. Texas A&M comes to the Swamp, and then they go to Starkville. That is a relatively challenging start to the season. I mean, they might not lose any of those games, honestly, but they certainly could lose 3 of them. And they should beat Mississippi State, but anyway, but that game is on the road. And then they play Central Florida. I don't know why they ever scheduled that. That is insane and absolutely stupid. And then they're playing Tennessee and Knoxville and Kentucky and Gainesville a week off. And then it gets to the worst part of the schedule. Listen to this. They play the Dogs in Jacksonville. Then they go to Austin. And then they host LSU. They host Ole Miss. And then they play Florida State in Tallahassee. They're not surviving the end of that thing.
No.
I want go ahead and comment on that, and then I want to say what I was going to say about not making a change.
They've got to crank out wins at the beginning of the year because it's just not going to happen at the end of the year. I mean, this roster got gutted a little bit over the offseason. Look, one of your best players just went to Georgia.
Yeah.
Your rival. You can't have that.
Let me ask you this though. Georgia, Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, and the Noles. Isn't that an opportunity too, though, Ryan?
It's an opportunity to go 0-5 or whatever it was that you just. Whatever. I mean, like that's what it is.
Aren't you being a little rough?
I'm being truthful. We speak the truth on this channel, Dean.
They completely could go 0-5, but isn't it an opportunity to go like 3-2 or something like that?
It'd be impressive, and that's how he'd save his job. You'd have to really consider keeping him at that point. Right? I mean, if he could beat rid of those 5 programs there in a row.
All right. That speaks to my second point, which is that Scott Strickland is the reason they didn't make a change. They don't want Scott Strickland hiring the next head coach. They want it to be that they can usher both these guys out the door at the same time. That's my suspicion. That's the problem. The River's Edge Adirondack chair from our friends at EcoPilot, you see it on the screen while I was talking about Scott Strickland. I mean, you could get this in Gator colors. I don't know why you'd necessarily want that. I mean, there's. I just go with that blue and black. But anyway,
backyard. That'd be a pretty extravagantly themed backyard.
Well, the Gators do go blue and black sometimes, which is very odd looking to me. But the red and black right there, 20-year warranty, completely recycled plastics. Make sure you're checking out the link down below. They have new products all the time. We're going to be showing you some of those new ones here soon. Ryan and I have been down there to their manufacturing facility. It's very impressive. But I think the biggest thing, Ryan, they don't want Scott Strickland making the call there. I think he made an okay hire at basketball. but I don't think it's necessary. We don't know on that one. We know with Billy Napier, he's in real. That's they're in trouble there. I mean, how is Florida this rough? Generally
They don't have
speaking,
the players. They're not talent. They're
in
not as
Florida,
talented as they were during their little Dan Mullen era. They're definitely not as talented the couple eras before that. It's slowly gotten to this point since Urban Meyer. And I mean, it's just been since then.
yeah. I mean,
That's when
they've.
it started.
I'm going to review real quick though. I mean, I think slowly is a relative
I
term.
know that they won the SECs twice, right? 15 and 20
The
in the
East,
last 10 years.
the East,
The East, which is gone. It's over for yeah.
correct.
They
They won the East in 15 and 16 and 20,
and
and
16.
that's
Okay.
it. But in the time since Urban, so Urban's last year, the Gators were 8-5. Then they roll into Will, who was 7-6, 11-2, 4-8, 7-5. McElwain went 10-4, 9-4, 4-7, and then Mullen went 10-3, 11-2, 8-4, 6-7, and then Billy's gone 6-7, 5-7. They have had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 losing seasons since 2013. That might be more than South Carolina's had.
Yeah, I mean, like it's interesting you were talking about they can't get to year four. It sounded like that pattern was in the fourth year. There's just a decline for all
Yeah.
these coaches. You get 11 win seasons, right? You get 10 win seasons, a couple SEC East titles. Obviously, they hadn't won the league since
Oh
what,
wait.
08? Yeah, so it's been a long time. It just Florida is one of those schools where it shouldn't be this way. You've
No.
got all the talent down there. You've got the infrastructure, you've got the money, you've got everything you would need. Florida is one of those schools where you look at it, and if they have the right person, they're a perennial top 10 team. But apparently they don't have the right person because we know what the sleeping giants were. Georgia was a sleeping giant. It
Mm-hmm.
was, and they had a really, really good person before Kirby Smart. Right now,
Yeah.
Billy Napier is not really, really good, but they could get that guy. So I think it starts with that. We feel that way about a lot of these schools, right? That's how we feel. Maybe LSU with
LSU.
Brian Kelly. Can he unlock another level, right? Instead of them just sporadically being really, really good. But I think it starts with that because they've got to recruit, and that's been their problem for two coaches in a row now.
Well, I'll tell you one thing about the Gators, and from 1990 to 2010, that 11-year run, Steve Spurrier had the best program in the country that wasn't, I guess Nebraska. I mean, you could make the case that Florida State was the best in that time as well, and you'd have a good case for that. Steve had a great run. Urban Meyer had a great run. What I would be concerned about if I were Florida is, outside of those two guys, probably the best coach in Florida history outside of those two is either Charlie Pell, who got him in real trouble by cheating, or or Dan Mullen. I mean, they have not had the same sort of longevity in terms of success. There has been meteoric boom moments at Florida. I mean, from 6 to 9, they won 13 games 3 times. They were 13-1, 13-1. A couple of several 13-1s and a 9-4. When Spurrier was there, it was he only went he only this was back when you played 11 games in regular season. They only failed to win 10 games 3 times. One of those was his original first year. They played in the Sugar Bowl multiple times, the Fiesta Bowl, the Orange Bowl. I mean, that was when it was hard to play in those games. You've just not seen that since. I mean, Ron Zook was the coach. Urban comes in. Will Muschamp. It didn't work. Jim McElwain didn't work. Dan Mullen, I think, was, man. Listen, Georgia people want to give Dan Mullen grief, and that's fine, Ryan. But he took them to the Peach Bowl, the Orange Bowl, and the Cotton Bowl. And I can tell you right now, Florida has not had that kind of success in a long time. And since Urban was there. And this is a program that should be in the playoff. We're not even talking about that right now. That's how much trouble they're in. And I think the right coach gets them right where they're supposed to be, which is
Yeah,
in the playoff for sure.
you have to wonder if Maybe they should have hung on to Dan Mullen for another
I
year.
think they should
Maybe
have,
they
but it was such a disaster.
it was getting bad there towards the end, and now we get to see his goofy face on TV. But uh, it just they're just not competitive with Georgia even right now. Like the last 3 years, the games weren't just absolute blowouts when you look at like a 50-12 or 50-0 kind of score, but it was no question what's going on. Like,
Yeah,
it's just not even close.
it's
Georgia's
just a matter of
absolutely
time.
dominant. Yeah, exactly. In this last game, they scored like 36 points in a row. So it
Yeah, I
just
mean, it's shocking. It's shocking to me. Like the time that Dan Mullen was there, both the programs were very similar in terms of. I think Georgia had the better program, but they were both very like, hey,
the
this is for the
output was
East.
similar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're gonna play in the New Year's Six Bowl or the playoff. Well, we're not at that point anymore, and I think that that was the only time, maybe with the exception of the 07-08 time, where Georgia and Florida have both been in the same moment in time, with the other one right there, because either Florida was so much better than Georgia like it was in the 90s or during the bulk of Urban's time, or Georgia's been, a lot better like with Kirby. There were some crossover times. I mean, I do think that in 12, let's see, 11, 12, they were about the same. In 10, they were about the same because they were bad in 10. Both of them were bad. But these two teams haven't been sort of really good for a while against playing one another. But I think Billy, I don't see how he survives this. With that schedule is brutal. It's going to be really tough to get to the end of the season. Thanks for
Yeah.
watching.